The EFL is officially back with only 2 games at the time of talking that ended in 0-0 draws, a goal fest back in the EFL, the best football pyramid in the world. Welcome back to Walking the London Road. Myself, Sam and Connor back with you. Con, it was certainly an interesting game at the KassStade on Saturday, and, you know, normal Oxford United service has resumed, giving us heart attacks and more grey hairs than we'd like at this age.
No, Sam. The best part of that game was the half-time entertainment, was it not? Which you weren't even there for. Absolute shambles by you. Shambles.
I was going to come on to that a bit later. But yes, Connor was at centre stage for the half-time entertainment at the KassStade. I will say if maybe he was up front, maybe we would have scored a bit earlier than the 95th minute. But folks, before we get too far into it, please remember to like, comment and subscribe. I know I bang on about a lot, but your support continues to be absolutely sensational. The engagement, the subscribers, the followers on our Spotify, the followers on our Twitter account, all that kind of stuff has been incredible since the start of the season, and we just want to make a massive thank you to all of you and hope we continue to kick on. So, Con, obviously, MK finished 2-2. We'll obviously break down each action of the game in depth in a little bit. But obviously, we talked about at the end of the last podcast and in the group chat during the week about kind of expectations going into this game. We talked about the fact that MK obviously spent a lot of money. They've got some very, very good players. Aaron Collins up top, Brand Wintle in the centre of the park, someone we know very, very well, led them out yesterday. What was your, after seeing their lineup, what was your prediction, not the right word, but your expectation? There we go. Your expectation. Did you think we were going to be competitive as we were in certain portions, or did you think this was going to be a bit of a long afternoon?
I genuinely had no idea on how the game was going to pan out and how the game was going to go. That's my honest answer when looking at the starting lineup, and also, I always thought in my mind that they were going to be a force this season. MK Dons coming into League One, and especially with some of the signings that they've made as well. So they've made some big name signings in Sam Nombe, who
yes,
and going up top with Collins, who if you listen to Not the Top 20, they're actually correct. I hadn't even noticed it, how much he's filled out up top and how much of a power forward Sam Nombe and putting Aaron Collins as a striker will do, and also Good at the back as well, who for some reason celebrated like it was the A420 derby and how good he was last season in League Two. It's always first game of the season, Sam. You generally have no idea what you're going to expect because, generally speaking, teams are bringing in players, they're losing players unless you're Oxford United. So it takes a fair few weeks, I think, to figure out how a team's going to go and how a team's going to play.
Yeah. So let's look at the lineup that Aaron Ramsey deployed. It was very much as expected. Jamie Cumming, of course, former MK man, started in goal. The back four made up of Brody Spencer, Sam Long, Ciaron Brown, and Jack Curry. Brannigan and McDonald starting in the two holding midfield positions as we expected. Goodrum in the 10 with Siriki Dembele and Adomo Amaku out wide. We mentioned last week this is probably going to be the lineup for the overwhelming majority of at least the first half of this campaign. And probably the strongest team we can put out, maybe with the exception of maybe Hellick. But, Hellick didn't finish last season particularly well.
No, it's funny you say that Hellick didn't finish the season particularly well, but we'll get onto it throughout the game. But there were certain stages where I thought that the man that we need at the moment is Hellick, and I'm not sure whether whether at some points during the season he's going to be utilised just because of the lack of physicality. When you look at that straight away, the lack of physicality that we have, and maybe Aaron Ramsey at some point is going to have to take that into consideration. especially like when we're having to defend corners and defend set pieces and having to attack set pieces. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised like this coming weekend against Stevenage if we have someone like Hellick starting instead of Long, or if Long moving to the right, but then you got to get rid of Spencer. So, there's a few headaches for Aaron Ramsey. And now you said about how we expect the lineup to be for the first half of the season, and you said about notable absentees. Well, there were two notable absentees, which I'm sure that we'll get onto. Not sure if you want to speak much about the bench, but when looking at it, I think that a lot of people were a little bit, a little bit taken aback at how light the bench looks. But a fair few kids, let's say, really put their names into the mix that they've that maybe they should be sticking around the squad a little bit longer.
Yeah, we'll come on to two of the youth members in just a little bit. Like you say, we'll also touch on the situation with the two absentees. But I will say, for first 20 minutes, I felt this game had a similar flow to Leyton Orient last week, Connor, because I thought the opening 15-20 minutes we were on top. We looked so good. We were, playing some really good football, and we get a little bit of fortune in the way the first goal comes about, but we put the pressure on. We forced MK back, and a few bounces, and Sparky gets his first goal back in League One.
I was impressed with the first 20 minutes. This is the first time that I've seen an Aaron Ramsey side in person. And I was saying to my old man, I was quite impressed and encouraged that, compared to the last 18 months that we'd seen, where it'd been passing around at the back and lumping it forward, there was a sign of intent. It was forward, it was progressive, it was direct, it was attacking, it was everything that we'd expected or expect of an Oxford United side to see. And it was actually, something that in the first 20 minutes that you'd go pay your money for. And, Sparky's goal, it came about through a bit of fortune, let's say, as well, in the 6 and around the 18-yard box, but still he had the tenacity and had the instinct to put it away. I wasn't quite sure about his celebration though, doing the old yapping in the ear and shushing, like, okay, yeah, you usually score in all this, but I don't think that many people doubt you as a striker in League One. It was more in the Championship maybe where a little bit of support was needed. But yeah, first 20 minutes I thought was a quite a good start and quite a good insight into what Aaron Ramsey wants to do.
Mark Harris's goatee era has officially begun. There was a lot of kind of fun and games made at half time when we realised he'd grown that out, and we're like, not quite sure, is he? It's certainly interesting.
See, I think he saw that last year Will Lancashire had like a little bit of bum fluff and like a little bit of tash up there, so he's trying to emulate him. The power of the goatee.
But our delight didn't last an awfully long time, because 9 minutes later, and corner kick ends up with Good heading it in the back of the net with a little bit of help along the way from Sam Long. And you mentioned there the lack of presence of Mikael Hellick. I've got a horrible feeling this is going to be a very, very common occurrence this campaign, that we're going to be sufficiently or significantly, I can't get my words out today, significantly weak on set pieces just because of the lack of height now in the back line.
Well, yeah, and the only feasible solution to that is that you drop Sam Long and then you put Hellick in, because there's no way that Sam Long was getting ahead of Brodie Spencer in right back. So that's a little bit of a headache and a battle that Aaron Ramsey's going to have to, he's paid to make those decisions. So at some point he's going to have to make them, unfortunately for Sam Long. But if he wants height and he wants physicality in that back line, I think that he is the standout candidate that would have to be dropped, unfortunately.
And just on the goal, it's, we've already mentioned about the lack of height, area presence in our defence, which, also look at the lack of Frankie Kent. It's one of the things we spoke about, was one of his major upsides in the Scottish Premiership last time out. But it's so easy for MK to put a couple of balls in the area, cause chaos amongst our defence, and then it ends up in the back of the net.
Yeah, in regards to the second goal, yeah. But to be honest, I thought for the last 20 minutes of the first half, MK Dons were just really good in what they were doing. I thought that it was indicative of the whole game, if you ask me. I thought that on the eye, we played the better football, but MK Dons had the better game plan, and because they executed that game plan, like their football came off better than ours was attempting to look. And it's an all-worn team. They're going to be physical. They're going to be strong, aggressive in your face, and they're going to make it hard and make it difficult, and they're going to be very direct in how they play. They're going to get lots of crosses in. They're going to, as I said earlier, turn Aaron Collins into a skinny stick, into like a big fuck off tree. And, also letting him be free at the back post, absolutely criminal stuff. But I'm sure that we'll come on to that. And, again, that's another thing about the defense. You say that we're going to have a lot of issues from set pieces. It might not just be set pieces. It might just be crosses on both flanks in general.
Yeah. So just to give you an idea, folks, about how much the momentum changed in this first half. The shot map was Oxford had 3 shots, 2 on target, and 1 big chance, which of course we took, and that was in the 20th minute. That was our last shot. From then, MK dominated. They had 13 shots in total, 6 on target, and their 1 big chance is taken by Aaron Collins. The second goal, look, we're 1 game in, so I'm not going to automatically, get back to massively going in on individuals, but Siriki Dembele is largely at fault for that second goal. It's a really lax pass, which allows the ball out wide, and then it's a simple one across the face for Aaron Collins to nod home.
Yeah, and that's why everybody's got to be turned on during the game. As I say, especially because against a team that's going to be as quick and as direct as that, and as big and as aggressive. We can't, especially with the lack of squad depth that we have, we can't afford for everybody not to be switched on 100%. Because if you need to come off because you're playing crap, unfortunately we haven't got the depth to bring on someone of greater quality. So everyone needs to be at it.
And also I'll say, there are some members of this squad that, am I a little bit harsh, Conor, to say that I think some of this squad should be a bit better when coming up against a Paul Warne side? Because they've done it a handful of times in their time at the football club. I'm thinking of Brannigan, I'm thinking of Sparky, I'm thinking of Sam Long, Ciaron Brown, Jamie Cumming. They've come up against his sides before, and although the shirts are different, for the most part, Paul Warne sides tend to play the same.
Yeah, but then that's not really on the players, is it? They're given instructions by Aaron Ramsey. So then is your issue more with his tactical staff and his scouting staff, that maybe that they should know what a Paul Warne side is going to be, what they're going to come up against?
Potentially. I'm just thinking, in those moments on the pitch when, Brannigan, for example, is looking at how, after we score and Aaron Collins and Sam Nombe are starting to grow into the game, their presence is growing. Maybe he should be a little bit, as captain, he's got the authority to say to, the players on the pitch, the role of the captain, as well as, obviously leading the players, is also basically being the on-pitch manager. In moments where, if the manager isn't able to get across the message he wants in the split second, because there's not a break in play where he can get it across, should really fall on the captain to do that. Do you know what I mean?
Potentially, I think you're being a little bit harsh. I can't lie.
Well, fair enough. Like I say, it's just a thought that kind of cropped in my head, and seeing that, like I say, the amount of this side have played against a Paul Warren side before, on on the multiple matches, and going, should there be a little bit more awareness of what they're gonna do? Let us know in the comments, folks. So we go into the second half, and whatever Ramsey said to them at half time, it was a rocket up the arse, which they very much needed, because they came out of that of the dressing room and started. First 10 minutes were a little bit. I think we're a little bit dead. I think it's fair to say there. I think. What were your thoughts? Because I'm just trying to kind of think of the right words to use to sum up the first 10 minutes of that second half.
I thought the first 10 minutes of the second half were, from an Oxford United point of view, were a little bit strange. I thought that MK Dons came out and they were, I thought that they were better for the first 10, 15 minutes of the second half, maybe edged it slightly. There wasn't really much going on. It seemed a bit like, I don't know, it seemed a bit tentative, if that's the word. I'm not sure if there was nerves or anything, or whether it was a bit of deja vu from last year when we were in the Championship, that teams come here and we've taken the lead and we've gone 2-1 behind, and whether, there's some of that, whether it's replaying in their head from last season about the amount of times that we'd go 1-0 up, or that then we just blown it and trying to sit back and defend. But first 10, 15 minutes of the second half, I thought the MK Dons were the better team, and then something switched. We grew into the game, and then as Ramsey brought on his subs, we just grew more and more into the game and progressively became the better team, showing more dominance.
Like you say, that first 10 minutes, Aaron Collins has a really good opportunity, header flashed across the face of goal, and that's where I thought this game might get away from us, just because MK started having more and more opportunities. There's, I think it's from Sam Nombe. There's one that ricochets off of the post. I think it's Collins or Nombe, and coming scrambling to cover it, and I'm thinking this is really going to, this could end up 3-4-1 to MK.
Yeah, that was a bit later in the half, I think, when that went off the post. But I think that especially in the last 5 minutes or so of the first half, you thought that this could be 3 or 4, like if we don't sort ourselves out after half time. But there were multiple times during the second half when you thought, oh shit, like this is like they're gonna wrap it up here. But there was one other glaring opportunity which they didn't, and I have absolutely no idea why he didn't decide to pull the trigger.
Yeah. So, like you said, I think the game largely changes with 2 substitutions that Ramsey makes. We start to, last 20 minutes, I think we look a lot better. We're starting to, get our rhythm back and creating a lot of opportunities. In just covering the stats off, in that second half, we have 67% of the ball, 14 total shots, just 2 on target, but 29 touches in MK's area. The flow, like I said, for the last 20 minutes was very much on our side. And the 2 substitutions that were made, first coming on the 65th minute, was Gatlin O'Donker for James McDonald. A little bit of an interesting one at the moment. At this moment, I thought, because I think the thought was, what does our shape look like? But I think it ended up transforming into a 4-1-4-1 with Brannigan kind of the deepest of the midfield, and you've got Goodrum and Gatlin a little bit further forward, of course, the Amaku and Dembele in the wide spaces.
Yeah, that seems about right. Yeah, I didn't really think about it when he came on for one reason or another, but.
And then after that, Peter Kioso replaced Brodie Spencer. Don't get me wrong, I thought PK did good enough. The thing that I think PK gives you over Brodie Spencer is he's a little bit more physical. I think Brodie's a bit more athletic, but I think PK is better at shielding the ball. and getting you set pieces in the attacking third.
Yeah, I think that sounds about right. And, I think that, bringing PK on for Brody Spence, ultimately, it had the right positive impacts, I think, that we were all looking for.
Yeah. And then obviously the other one being a senior debut for Mo Missanga, replacing Siriki Dembele. We'll talk about him more in just a little bit, but of course, for the large majority of the remaining kind of 10 minutes, we were camped in MK's half, peppering opportunities, peppering balls into their area, and later on, one last glassy little combo between Missanga and Odonka. Gatlin Odonka flashed the ball across the face of goal, and Ciaron Brown stabs it home. Most unlikely of goal scorers, but better late than never.
Is he the most unlikely of goal scorers? Because I think he has a pretty decent goal record as a centre half at the club.
That's very true. Yeah, the Cambridge game on Boxing Day a couple of years ago. I think that was his goal.
Luton in the Championship.
Yeah, Luton.
Also, the way that he struck the ball, like it was going behind it when he struck it with such ferocity as well. Absolutely leathered it.
But like we said, better late than never to get that equaliser. It was quite funny. He'd been awarded the player of the match, and all the people in 19 where I was stood were kind of looking around, going, "How the hell's he got player of the match for this performance he's put in?" Because he wasn't amazing, and then pops up with the equaliser.
Yeah, that's what we said as well. We're like, how's he got man of the match?
But after that ball hits the back of the net, what I really like is, again, the mentality that I think Ramsey spoke about after the game is we don't like settling for draws. It was get the ball, run back to the centre circle. We've got 2 minutes of added time remaining. Let's try and win this game. And we managed to win the ball back fairly quickly, get into the wide spaces again. Again, Mo Missanga and Gatlin Odonka playing a key role. Little bit of controversy, maybe. We'll talk about him in just a minute. That I think we'd taken a corner kick. It was headed away, and then the ref blew the full-time whistle before the second one had been taken. But as much as obviously we would have preferred to start the campaign with 3 points, to come back from 2-1 down to equalise, get us off the mark, it's not the worst thing.
It's not the worst thing, no. Obviously, I think that a lot of us came in and not expecting, but hopeful of getting 3 points, expecting of a display. But, when you look at the bigger picture, there are things that you can be very encouraged about. The mentality to come back from behind when last year we would have crumbled, as you say, the mentality from the manager when he was screaming at them, by the way, to get back to the centre circle. To get back to the centre circle and, try and go for a winner. Showing like the youth academy products and the difference that they made to the team and that they made to the game, all thoroughly encouraging. And as you say, to come away with 1 point is better than nothing. So, you can only say that's a good thing.
So let's talk about two of the academy boys that contributed. First, Gatlin Odonka, the one, of course, we've seen many, many times in an Oxford United shirt. Gats, we talked about in pre-season, this would be a big season for Gatlin, playing number 2 behind Sparky, competing, had a good goal return in pre-season, and, gets the assist for the equaliser. This was a pretty decent performance for Gatlin off the bench, and I have to say, he got absolutely clattered. I think 5 minutes after he came on, he got very unlucky by a supposed high foot being awarded against him. Gatlin still got that ability to hold at the ball very well. I'm really liking, this new look Gatlin Odonka we're seeing under Aaron Ramsey, Connor. Yeah,
it was a good display. It was encouraging. It's just one game in the season, but we'll hope to see more of that through the season. That high foot and that tackle, I didn't think that there was anything wrong with that challenge, by the way. But if there was nothing wrong with that challenge, should have should have played on. But I guess that we're not going to speak about the referee, which is a good thing because I think we could be here for about an hour. But what I also loved was Gatlin O'Donker's attitude and passion, and he wasn't afraid to get in the MK Dons players' faces.
Yeah.
Have a bit of not so much have a scrap, but have a bit of handbags with them. Showing that he's there, and the mentality and the attitude that he's got, that he seems to be that he's a winner. And although he might get a little bit wound up at times, he's not going to be shoved about, even if you still forget that he's 21 years old. So
yeah, that's that fire in the belly is for a striker. Even if I think Gatlin's role this season, we've already mentioned about that in the pecking order, he's going to be playing number 2 to Mark Harris, but his versatility, we saw it with his loan out at Barnet, that he played mostly on the right for them, and that versatility I think could be so key for us this season. We've spoken about multiple times the issues we've got especially on the right hand side. Again, we'll talk about that momentarily. But the fact that Gatlin can play in multiple areas is going to mean, he's only likely to get more game time. And B means that, again, like you say, he's still only 21 years old, can develop to be a very quite unique profile of attacker for us.
Yeah, that's true. He's versatile, can play in multiple areas, but surely that his main position this season is either going to be up top or even in like a number 10 role. If Ramsey's going to play only one striker up front, surely that's going to be mainly where he's going to be playing. He's going to be playing down the middle instead of looking to go either side down the channels. Although, as I say that, his first goal is Ciaron Brown's goal came from a delivery that was from O'Donker on the edge of the box on one of the channels. But there's still so much that I think that can come from this lad, and so much potential for this season. But I think that he's looking good, he's looking exciting, and there's definitely going to be more opportunities, and I'm desperate for him to get his first goal this season, so hopefully that's going to come sooner rather than later.
You can only imagine the relief on his face is going to be it's going to be such a weight off his shoulders, I think, for Gats to get that league goal. Let's talk about the other one, who we saw him, I think he was on the bench for the Birmingham game, I think. We talked about it in the episode where we talked about youth players and just for the start of the season. Missanga, 17-year-old, looks, he's obviously 17, so he's still a bit skinny, but from the short 15-minute cameo this lad had, there's a lot to work with. There's the one negative is, and this is completely understandable for a young footballer playing their first league minutes for their club, a little bit of indecision, a little bit of the mental side of the game not being up to the speed with the senior players, which, like I said, is completely understandable. But the way he would drive his fullback, his persistence. It was I think just before we got our equaliser, him and Gatlin were just constant battling on the left hand side to regain possession, win a corner kick. I think could have had a decent opportunity if the referee didn't get in the bloody way on the edge of the area. And I think it was just before the full-time whistle. He takes the ball short and then I think has a little drive at the defence and looks to pass it off. But I would have preferred really if he'd taken a shot on goal, just to, if you don't buy a ticket sort of mentality.
He had more touches in the MK Dons box in his short cameo spell than any other Oxford United player did throughout the whole game. So
wow.
Yeah, there's a stat for you. Yeah, and I think he also took 3 shots, and they were like from almost exactly the same identical position, the same thing that he wanted to do, but you could see some of the power that he had behind it and the veracity that he was going at it. I thought that was a good opening. I thought that was a good opening debut for him, a good debut performance from him. Obviously, as you say, he's 17. I think he might even be 18. So, he's a very, very raw player, but there's definitely, as you say, there's a lot to work with. There's a lot of potential there. I think that he brings something that's exciting, that's different, that's versatile, and he's come through the academy. So, and actually, as he came on, there were a lot of people around me that were like, "Who's this kid? Where's he come from?" And like, he's an academy product. We couldn't have brought him in from anywhere. He's from the academy. So, and it was really nice to see Odonka and Missanga both together, and both the two of them being directly involved in our equalising goal one way or another.
Yeah, and also the thing I will say about Mo Missanga is you often see with young players, and I'll say I think Gatlin had this when he started making his first few appearances. I think Tyler did a little bit as well. I think most of our youth players do. They have a lot of pressure. And they feel maybe a little bit restricted because obviously, a massive stage, massive opportunity, your first minutes for the football club. But I thought in that little cameo, Mo seemed to have a little bit of freedom. He seemed to be playing without the shackles on. And maybe that was from Aaron Ramsey saying, look, you've got this bit of time, show me what you can do. And from a player's point of view, that must be one of the best things you can hear from your manager, because especially for players in wide areas, their bread and butter is being expressive about causing their fullbacks issues, and Mo really looked like that. That would be a really key attribute of his going forward.
Yeah. I mean, he looked like that. They was doing that anyway, as you say, playing with freedom, going to express himself. And I think at a very young age, that's what you want to do. And I'm not sure, neither of us have been professional footballers, but I'm not sure what you've done any Sunday league or playing Saturday league, but like, I'm not sure if like when you're a very young age and you're being told what to do and you've got all that anxiety and adrenaline going through you for your debut, especially when it's in front of just under 11,000 people, that you whether you'll be able to retain the amount of information that the manager's relaying onto you. And it's just easier just to go out and say, here's X, Y, and Z, go out, enjoy it, and then express yourself.
And again, just on that point of, in front of 11,000 people, it's why I think in those opportunities, the club are able to have the youth team play at the KassStade for, like we've seen, youth FA Cup games and so on and so forth. It is so important because it gets them used to being around that environment. To those games, it's usually I think about 3,000, but playing in front of more than a couple of hundred people at youth games and coach and so on and so forth. That's such a good learning experience for these players, and I'm glad that the club has done that more and more often in the last couple of years.
Yeah, it's good. It's good experience and good preparation, isn't it?
So let's get on to the reason that Mo was able to get his debut, most likely, and that's because Stan Mills has, according to Aaron Ramsey, told him he was not in the right whether readiness or frame of mind to play against MK on Saturday. Now, obviously, this follows Aaron Ramsey saying on his pre-match press conference on Thursday, I think it was, or was it Friday, that a deal to take Stan Mills to Preston North End had been agreed. No confirmation yet from either club about details of the deal and all that kind of thing. What Aaron Ramsey did say is that it would not go through until January. So we've got Stan Mills until January. This obviously raises questions. The fact that Stan then on the morning of the game said, I'm not in the right frame of mind, whether it be fitness-wise or with this transfer situation going in the background to feature. And obviously Ramsey spoke about how disappointed he was with this. This, I think, was the fear of a lot of us when we heard that the deal was going to be held off until January, Connor.
Yeah, I said I said pre-game, I was saying to my dad and people around me that Aaron Ramsey's probably drawn a line under it and said, yeah, this is going to happen. He just wants, he took a gamble, put it out in the air, out in the open, even if the clubs haven't announced anything yet, haven't published anything. And that way it takes the pressure off him and he doesn't need to be asked the questions again. And it puts the ball back in Stan Mills' court. And Stan Mills had the opportunity to also draw a line under it and go out and be in that match day squad and say, he doesn't really have to say anything, but just carry on being a professional until whenever the time comes that he does leave. However, I did say, however, if he isn't in the squad, then immediately questions are going to be asked. It's not going to look great on him. Fingers are going to be pointed, and it's going to be, why aren't you in the squad? Is it a case of that you don't want to be here anymore? Are you throwing your toys out the pram? And I think that I've seen a few fans in the fan base just say, oh, well, we'll just get rid of him because they've just heard that he didn't make himself available and that he doesn't want to play. I understand why a few fans might feel like that, but it's just so multi-layered given into the situation that we're in at the moment. So, yeah, we could get rid of him and we could say, yeah, go now, but then that sets a precedent for other players. That's literally the worst thing that can happen now. The one thing that can happen is that I think that we'll have to wait and see for the Stevenage game if he is in the squad. And let's be honest, he didn't make himself available for the last game. We'll have to see if he does make himself available for Stevenage. If he doesn't, we'll have to wait to see what Aaron Ramsey says, because he seems to be the only one that comes out with an ounce of truth at the moment and an ounce of substance to what he says. So we'll have to wait and see what happens there. If it comes out that, again, he hasn't made himself available, he says that he's not feeling it, then we obviously can't sell him, because, as I said, it sets a precedent, and players like KassStade, who we'll get onto, players like Jack Curry, Brody Spencer, who have all been acting in the way that you should do while you're under contract, and not kicking up a fuss whatsoever. They'll start saying, I had championship clubs looking at me. My agent was possibly talking to other clubs, and now, I've been adhering to my contract while these two haven't. So what would happen in that case? All premeditated, and what would, if it does happen next week, whatever happens, we'll discuss it. But if it comes to light that Stan Mills is just outright refusing to play for the club, the best thing that the club can do is either say you're going to go and train on your own, or you're going to go and train with the under-18s and the under-21s, and we don't want you around the first team squad, and you'll be going in January. Because once you let him go, you set a precedent for other players.
Yeah. It's also worth saying there was a rumour that circulated from those that often position themselves near the player's entrance on Saturday that apparently Stan kind of had his head down and walked past a lot of people asking for photos in autographs. I don't know that for a fact. I heard that second hand. But if that's true, that's not a good look. I did hear subsequently that he then was taking photos and stuff after the game. So, I'm not sure kind of what to think about that. The thing I did, think when Ramsey came out and said that he not made himself available was the Jonathan Rowe situation that Norwich had when obviously they came to the KassStade for our first game back in the Championship. That obviously Marseille had made a bid. I think it was the night before, and he said that Jonathan Rowe had taken himself out of consideration. Obviously, the situation there is that in this case, we believe the situation is that an agreement has been, or there is an agreed transfer. It's not completed as far as we're aware, but that an agreement is there for Stan to go to Preston in January. So it's a bit. It's not a great look, as we said in the chat, Connor, for Mills to go, I'm not feeling up to it, blah, 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 blah. Ramsey, like you said, has been honest. He's put the ball in Stan's court, and we'll talk about KassStade in a minute, because there is a slight difference in those situations. Obviously Stan featured across pre-season.
Sam, the worst thing that Stan Mills did this weekend was not sign kids' autographs. I don't give a shit if you have quarrels with the club, or you have quarrels with the management, or you have quarrels with the staff or with your manager. Just sign and take kids, or just sign kids' programs and take photos with the kids. Like, what are you doing? You're you might be one of the best players in the club, but you're not bigger than the club, and they're just kids, for Christ's sake. Like, they're not sure if you remember a few months ago, I can't remember what club it was, but they just walked past the kids' mascots and they just completely ignored them. You think that they're kids, for Christ's sake. Don't take it out on them. Whoever is advising you, whether it is probably your old man or whether it's your agents, and you're just trying to throw the toys out the pram as much as possible. He really went down in a lot of fans' estimations then, so I get why a lot of fans are seriously peed off of him. And when you said that you heard rumours, I've spoken to people who were there with their kids, and that they said that's exactly what he did. He stayed in his car for a substantiated period of time, and then he walked past and he put his head down and he said, "No, not today." That, again, I reiterate, they're kids, they're children. Like, just sign, even if you don't want to be there, just look like that you want to. Just sign the autographs for 5 minutes, take a few photos, and then make your way through to the players' lounge.
So that situation with Stan Mills. And like I say, we'll wait and see if he features at the weekend against Stevenage. Brian Kearsmacher, Aaron Ramsey obviously spoke about him as well after the game, noting that it's a different situation because, of course, Brian didn't feature at all in pre-season. Remind us what the summation of what kind of Aaron Ramsey said about Brian's situation, Connor.
Ramsey said essentially that Kearsmacher hasn't played a minute of football during pre-season, so and even training wise, I think, as well. So it's up to him, and the ball's in his court to be able to get himself up to match fitness and match readiness, and it may take a while, to get minutes in the legs. But again, throwing the ball back in his court, and I think questioning if he's committed to the club or not. And again, there might be another situation with Stan Mills where if you're not committed, well then sorry sunshine, you're not going in August. You're not going in the summer. The club's made that pretty clear.
And that's the thing, is also obviously it's a different situation, the fact that Brian Kearsmacher has a release clause in his contract, and
I don't understand how no championship club, or in fact any club in Europe, has come in and triggered it. Either it's a lot higher than we believe, or clubs are waiting and just trying to lowball it, but the club aren't going to accept anything unless they have to, unless it's triggered. So I think it feeds into the discussion that we had a few weeks ago where we said about clubs not taking the piss. I think that's what clubs are trying to do. A lot of them, I don't think, because we're the first that have been punished or have been restricted because of these rules and these financial rules. I don't think that's really registered, or it's clocked with a lot of clubs, that we don't need to settle. We can't buy any players, and we're not in, a financial ruin where our owner can't put in more money. Like, you can sort of, but we've spent too much. But there are apparently ways in which we can recoup that money. It's not as if that we need a fire sale right now.
Yeah. Let's talk about that, because obviously something broke last week that I chatted about on my TikTok about kind of a very interesting development in the squad cost management protocol rules. And that's that the PFA have lodged a legal challenge against the rules. So there, we already spoke about in the group chat that this will not be resolved by any point through this summer transfer window. But it may be the case that if this is if the legal challenge is successful, I'm not sure how long these take. I will say that this isn't the first time the PFA have launched a legal challenge against the EFL, and back in 2021 they were successful via an independent committee. If the PFA are successful again, Oxford's embargo should be lifted, and that means we would be able to sign players on free transfers, obviously before the January transfer window. Like I said, I'm not sure how long the legal process will take. It usually is quite a long one, so it might not even be before January. Obviously, I think you mentioned in the chat when we were kind of discussing this that there is, if it is to get thrown out, there is very good standing on Oxford United's point of view to make a claim against the EFL for lost revenue or to make some kind of claim for compensation. And Jerome Saylor of BBC Oxford said that Oxford United have made the EFL aware that the club are monitoring and paying very close attention to this situation.
The worst thing that could happen to the EFL is if the PFA, they win their suit. And God, I hope it doesn't happen. Let me make this very clear. I hope it doesn't happen. But and then Oxford United get relegated, because then there could be all sorts of paperwork that the EFL are going to have to deal with. Lawsuits going in left, right, and centre. But I'm just surmising that there'll be some sort of claim that if the PFA do win, that there'll be some, as you say, that there'll be some sort of claim for compensation in one way or another, whether it be monetary or whether there be special circumstances and discompensation, that we can go out into other markets and that we have, an isolated transfer window of ourselves, whether it be for 1 month. That's just me putting ideas out into the ether there, but you'd have thought that there'd be something that the club would be wanting that would be quite substantial.
Yeah. The other thing that also was reported is there is a very convoluted way that Oxford could make a signing in this window. Now, I don't fully understand how, but from, I think, some articles and bits and pieces that George Ellick had been made aware of, I think it's if Oxford shown a short term they can afford the squad, they could then be appealed to an EFL body, was it, Connor, that then we can make a signing?
It was far too complicated for me, mate. I can't even lie.
Yeah, it's such a a very convoluted situation. I think that the club could make a signing, but I will say it's certainly more obscure than Danny Mills made it sound when he spoke to Talk Shite, not understanding a single fucking thing about our embargo. Anyways, obviously Saturday we go away to Stevenage, and they, like us, drew 1-1 at the weekend. They also equalised late on through Sanderson in the 91st minute after Armour had given Burton Albion the lead. What do we reckon about this game? Because, Stevenage has definitely been an interesting place for us to go in over the past couple of seasons.
Yeah, I think that it could be, quite an interesting and almost quite concerning game as well, because, Stevenage are quite a physical side from what I've seen anyway. So, and as we discussed at the start of the pod, physicality might be a bit of a concern that we have. So whether there's going to be, whether there's going to be an appearance from Helic this season, which is definitely what we'll need at the back, especially when you have players in there like Josh McGuinness and also, their striker's just gone out of my head now.
Reed.
Jamie Reed, that's it. Thank you, Sam, as well. Pretty physical. Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't appear that we'll be seeing a former Oxford man, Matt Phillips, because he didn't appear in their match squad. And I've not seen that he's injured or has been released or moved on. I'm not sure what's happened with Matt Phillips, but it doesn't appear he'll be making an appearance on Saturday. He'll start and then score, because that's just what happens to Oxford United. Although as we said last time, we don't do predictions around here just because, I don't believe in all the superstitious nonsense, but I don't want to jinx it, which is just, it's such a dumb mental thing. But I think it's fair to say that Stevenage, do we think there'll be a good barometer for, and we spoke about MK, we're expecting to be, I think you and I have both got them in our playoffs that we did last week. I think I've still got Stevenage in the relegation zone. Remind me where you had them?
I don't think I put them in the relegation zone, but I think I had them around mid-table to lower mid-table.
So do we reckon this will be kind of a good barometer of the sides around us? Because I think, what we all said last week, that we're all foreseeing our season being sat in mid-table.
Potentially, yeah, it could be a good barometer of teams that'll be in and around us. So, yeah, and plus, it's so early in the season. Like, it's the second game into the season, so I don't think we can really be having these discussions until we're into October and the table's starting to take a little bit of shape.
That's very fair. That's why we don't look at the table, because I think the well-worn adage, don't look at the table until you're at least 10 games in, because, like you say, these first few matches can be so unpredictable, with obviously teams just getting in new players, and players just getting back to fitness from their summer and all that kind of stuff. Any closing thoughts for this week's podcast?
1 point down, 99 to go. Rambo's embargoed, 100 points yellows.
100%. Let's get on board with that, folks. Thanks so much for watching this week's episode of Walking the London Road. As mentioned at the start, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe on the YouTube version. Follow us on Twitter and on Spotify, and please give us a massive 5-star rating. Massively helps us out across all those platforms. You can follow us on our socials, as always, linked in the description below, as well as on screen. And we'll see you next week for our review of the Stevenage game.